Hey, everybody, welcome to Cars with Cocktails, a show where Charles and I, aka the home mechanic, drink stuff and talk about car stuff. Today, we're talking about fuck-ups, and very topical for Charles because he just ran into a little of an issue himself. And I know for me, I've fucked up plenty of things in my life. So, yeah, Charles, fuck-ups.
Wait. Is the whole thing just going to be about my fucks? Because we got enough time to fill 3 or so hours of talking about just things that I've screwed up. I also feel like, Paul, we've forgotten all forever to mention that this might not be a show where you want the kids in the room, as you've already heard some colorful language. So I guess that warning is a little late today, but now you know there will be colorful language continued out through this series. So today we're talking about fucking things up. And in my hand, I have the, I guess you'd call this the side flange for the rear differential on my black R32. And if you look, I don't know, maybe right about there you go, you can see it's cracked. So that stems from me missing a very important step in the repair manual called remove the snap ring, stupid. And then, so that was like egregious mistake number one, but could have been overcame. The real issue really though is
the hammering that followed.
Yeah, well, not trusting my gut on like, this doesn't feel right. Like you're only pressing a bearing out of, you're pressing like the diff sleeve out of a bearing. So it should come out fairly straightforward. In fact, if you got the bearing hot enough, the diff piece would probably fall right out. And that's kind of what I was expecting. And when that didn't happen, I'm like, that's really weird. Crank, crank, crank. That's really weird. Crank, crank. And it exploded.
So and that was followed by expletives.
Severe expletives. Definitely not a happy boy about that. Luckily, there are multiple recyclers of VW Audi parts and even a handful specializing in R32 stuff. So I think I'm going to be able to find it. The new factory part is obsolete. So that's kind of a bummer. I'm guessing that would have probably been a $200 cover though, given kind of VW common pricing, but you know, it's whatever. A painful lesson to learn, mostly expensive. It's not really holding me up for the video that'll be coming out. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to weave some funniness into the video and hopefully still give people a good solid DIY. But it looks like I'll probably have a whole new diff assembly and Haldex assembly coming anyway. So it'll be a good backup. And I also learned that you don't actually have to take off nearly as much stuff as the repair manual says, shockingly enough.
To get the diff out.
Yeah, to get the diff out. I've seen other guys even like just separate the two sides and pull the diff out that way, rather than taking the Haldex completely off, which, I mean, it's probably doable. But you know, I wanted to step-by-step the repair manual. This is an install I've never done before. So, you know, trying to follow step-by-step, and it looks like I fucking failed that class pretty significantly. So yeah, I am drinking. I'm not really drinking my sorrows away, but we are drinking. I'm drinking a gin and tonic with cherry juice, I think. I feel like it's, what is this, February? So maybe celebrating red and pink. I don't know.
I'm a little jealous. You said red and pink, so I was like, okay. So I have a cranberry with gin, and I'll be honest with you, that cherry sounds much better than the cranberry.
Yeah, this is like Trader Joe concentrate cherry with a lemon. I think it's lemon tonic water, so it's not bad. I don't know that I would want to drink a bunch because it's got kind of a weird sweetness in it that I don't super prefer, but not bad. I think we've kind of fallen off the drink, like specialty drink things. Honestly, I think what it is, if I can take a moment to complain about something, which I will anyway, I'm blaming that fucking Campari, because that shit, I feel like, turned my world upside down, and it can just go to hell and stay there. That disgusting beverage. I don't even think it's a beverage, liquid. Yeah, so I've kind of been thrown off, but I think maybe in the next week or so we'll kind of get back to the sinks on drinks and have some fun stuff, or we
Maybe
won't.
some
I
of
don't
our
know.
guests, our upcoming guests will be selecting something interesting. So, um, in terms of actually, we did a diff on on the Mark V rear-wheel drive build because the diff had to get welded so that I could do donuts. So I've disassembled one of those rear setups. I actually was not a part of reassembling that. That happened without me, so I actually don't recall, and it happened quite some time ago, so I couldn't tell you. But fuck ups are aplenty, and I think I think the interesting thing that people probably don't realize, especially you and I both know because we are so publicly out there, and every single thing you say is critiqued by the warriors of the keyboards. That there's a lot of perception that being a tech or being somebody who is in the know and knows what's going on with cars means you never fuck shit up.
Yeah, and that, like, not only do you never fuck shit up, but you know every single thing about every single thing that has ever existed. And I can tell you right now, I mean, there are people that are billions of times smarter than I am and have billions of times more knowledge than I do. I mean, it's not that big of an achievement to have that, but even that person that you look at and go, holy shit, they seem to know everything. They don't know everything. They also fuck things up. And, you know, the main reason why I made a post on Instagram and Facebook about it, because I although it's not my finest moment, what it is it's an opportunity to remind people that, one, yes, every single person that is doing anything of any meaning, whatever it is, whether it's fixing cars or anything, will screw stuff up. Because if they're not screwing stuff up, they're probably not doing anything meaningful anyway, right? And I think what we run into now, we see these people online doing stuff, right? Whatever the stuff is, making cool cakes and making fancy outfits and fixing cars like Paul and I do, and they share the highest achievements that they get, right? The, hey, look, I did this amazing thing. Hey, look, I made this really awesome 700 tier cake. Hey, look, I made this fashion thing. I don't know anything about fashion, so I made this fashiony thing that's cool or whatever. Hey, I fixed this really hard problem, or hey, I solved this thing, or hey, I built this thing, right? And that gets us, the public, watching that in the mindset of, wow, this person just is the best. They're the coolest. They must never make mistakes. But what is left out is all those things that you fucked up and all those times you made mistakes to get to the point where you can do all of those really amazing achievements. And what I worry is that people think that if this person is this is what they're presenting, right? Because it's just like a video. What you see in the video is what the creator wants you to see in that video.
Right.
They're like, unless it's a live feed. And even then, I mean, I can position a camera to show you whatever I want. Well, not whatever I want, but or not whatever you want, maybe.
Whatever I want.
Whatever Paul wants. But look, keep in mind that every Instagram post, every TikTok video, every YouTube video, every anything like that has some level of edit and some level of filter on it. So when you see that really amazing shit, except our video, because neither one of us edit anything, you are legit getting.
Well, these episodes.
Yeah, this is what I mean.
This
one.
This is the least edited of anything you could ever imagine that exists on the internet, and that's purely because of effort.
Yeah. We're not hiding anything. We're just lazy with the edit. But I do worry that people have this like false sense of, I don't even know what the right word is, but they have this kind of false sense that everyone else is doing it perfect. And if I make a mistake, I must be a real shithead because nobody else that I've seen today in my scrolling of my Instagram feed has made a mistake. And I thought that was important to just kind of fall on my own sword there and and just remind people that. And yeah, it sucks. And yeah, I'm pissed and definitely not my finest hour. But, maybe that'll remind someone like, hey, it's all right to fuck up sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting thing to me is fuck ups are something that every person makes, but most people, and I'm thinking about this currently, and I can share stories of fuck ups I've had that were colossal in my short time as a tech. But what really comes to mind for me is people when they go to shops, and I've seen this a lot, and I know it's happened with us, and I'm sure it's happened with it happens all the time. Is they talk about a shop, that shop makes a mistake on their car, the shop owns the mistake, tells them about it, and then they say, "I'm never going to them again."
That is the stupidest choice
It is the
you could
stupidest
possibly make.
fucking thing you could ever do, is because the shop who tells you that they've made a mistake, they own up to it, and then they make it right. They fix the thing they fucked up. That's the shop you should go to.
Yeah,
The one,
you should be tripping over your dick to get there.
yes, you should trip over your dick and wish it was that long. Because they're the ones who are actually being honest with you. I mean, I know for a fact, I remember a customer that it was a Mark 7. And I, to my knowledge, he has not returned to this day. And this was a long time ago. We had done something that the pendulum mount had been out. And on Mark 7 cars, when you remove the pendulum mount bolt, if you shift the engine around enough, it can cause it to where when you put it back in, the bolt will go in, but because the bolt hole is actually shifted past the bolt. Our tech did it. He bolted it down. Everything was in place. Well, it wasn't captive inside the actual pendulum mount. So the engine swung forward and the belt rubbed on the lower radiator hose and eventually went through it, and it created a coolant leak. Customer got towed back to us. Obviously, we covered the tow. We covered, all kinds of different things. Right. I think we even gave him some sort of free service or free oil change. So I don't remember what we did exactly specifically, something along those lines. And I understand why you'd be upset. I 100% do. But the fact that it happened, we owned up to it. We take care of it. We fix your car as fast as we can. Shouldn't mean that you never come back to us again. It should mean the opposite. Now, there is concern for negligence. I understand that. But at the same time, when you fuck something up, you own it and you take care of it. That's at least my perception.
Yeah, and that really is the differentiator between, speaking just in shops, that's a differentiator between a good shop and a not good shop. I mean, all shops are going to make mistakes. All technicians are going to fuck up, all advisors, all service managers, right? Every parts, all the pieces of the puzzle, everybody makes mistakes. That shop that says, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, we're working on your car and I don't know quite how it happened, but a roll cart rolled into your car and scratched it. Here's a loaner car. We're going to send it over to the body shop and get it painted. We'll call you when it's done. Don't worry about it. Oh, and by the way, here's all the other extra cool stuff that we did for you," right? The shop that does that is the kind of place you want to work at. The shop that says, "Hey, our technician was working on something and broke a bolt, and now we're going to have to spend 3 more days fixing your car. Here's all the things we're going to do to help you out." That's the shop you want. The shop that, your Mark 7 example has that happen, sends a car down the road, car gets a coolant leak, car gets towed back, looks at it and goes, "Well, I guess you hit something. Sorry, it'll be another $700 because this isn't our problem," right? That happens. And why would you say, I get it, you're pissed, right? I would be pissed too. And I would have a certain level of apprehension about immediately going back. But man, that shop that just tells it like it is, "Hey, we fucked up." Like, I think that's a lot more common than people think. I could be way wrong on that one too, though. But that shows the true character of the place that you're doing business with. Not never messing up, because that doesn't happen. Not messing up and hiding it, hoping you don't find it, right? That's the kind of shop you don't ever want to go back to, or you know, whatever the infinite stories in between. And this is something I always try to impart on the new technicians coming up. Like, look, dude, you're gonna mess stuff up. You are not going to get through your career without doing something fucking stupid or lazy or misreading a repair manual. You're not going to get through your career with, unless you quit today, without doing one of those things. The only choice for you is to own up to it, do whatever the hell you got to do to make it right. Learn from that. I promise you, I'll never forget that there's a fucking snap ring on holding that shit in place. Learn from it and then move on. And I think that's like also as important as owning up is like, don't let this ruin your life. It's not that big a deal. You know, it sucks for a minute and then you pay your toll, your stupid tax sometimes as it's called, and you move on.
Yeah, that to me, it's so weird to me because the person, a couple things. One, as a customer, and I understand 100% why you'd be pissed. Makes sense. You're being inconvenienced. It's a huge problem for you. It affects your life. Like there's a lot of problems. But I don't understand how people who don't realize that other people make mistakes. It's like you definitely have made mistakes in your life. Definitely,
you bought that third owner S4. Of course, you made mistakes in your life
with 154,000 miles. But you do that, and then also on the same side, you're creating an incentive for them to lie to you, right? Because if they know you're not going to be their customer, if they tell you the truth, what do you think they're going to do? Now, any good shop is going to do the right thing regardless. But my point is you're creating the incentive to lie to you, because if they know you're never going to be their customer again, fuck it. They may just take a shot. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, oh well.
Yeah. I just feel like people's take a different turn, but I feel like people's approach to like finding and working with a shop is almost completely backwards of how, if you like used your brain, it really would be. And it's unfortunate. And it leads to people spending a lot more money than oftentimes they would probably have to, and feeling like they got taken advantage of, in a considerable way. And that's unfortunate. Everybody fucks up. Everybody fucks up. Everybody fucks up.
Okay, so two things to make this actionable for people at home, for the kids at home. What would you say from obviously us as people, we make mistakes. You know, I probably show it more just because we kind of hang our ass out there a little bit more on most of the content we create. But in terms of actionable for people who are shopping for a shop, what would you say would be a way to know whether a fuck up is negligent or just a mistake?
That's tough. That's a super tough question. I'm coming at this with the lens of knowing what I'm looking at. And I think that helps, knowing, obviously knowing what you're looking at when it comes to your car and what they're talking about. I would probably want to see the fuck up and see if you could like place the story together, right? On what happened. That may or may not help you out at all. Man, sometimes you're just going to have to take the shop at their word. And oftentimes the person you're talking to is probably not the one that fucked up. Like if the technician broke something on your car, you're probably not talking to them. You're talking through an advisor. So you can't like read their body language and things like that. But that's a tough one. I don't know. I don't think I have a good answer for that.
I think, I agree. I think it's a very difficult question to ask. So I asked it, but the thing that I think maybe, like you said, and maybe as we've talked about in the past, somebody should be able who understands something should be able to explain it to you, someone simply, even if you're not very mechanically inclined, or very, very knowledgeable about cars or anything like that. They should be able to explain it in a way that you should at least be able to understand it. And I think it should make sense given that's the case. So if you're a person who has at least a decent sense of logic and you can follow what's going on, it should probably make sense whatever they're telling you.
Yeah, like your Mark 7 example, you know, if you were to explain that to someone that understood what that was, you could definitely go into a level of detail quite a bit more in depth than you would with the average, you know, the 75-year-old couple that has their car, drives to church on the weekend, right? But you could still explain it in a way that, like, hey, we had to take this part out. Sometimes what happens is this piece over here, as you're showing them, can shift around. It's pretty uncommon, but it can happen. And unfortunately, when he went to put it back together, that had shifted. He didn't see it right away, or he didn't see it at all. And so we drove the car. We didn't experience anything weird. We sent it down the road. Clearly, that happened. We made a mistake. Versus the dude was drunk driving your car and wrecked it.
Right.
And that's pretty cut and dry, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard of, not drunk, but I've heard of circumstances from other places that people were flipped over customers' cars.
Oof.
Yikes, fucking yikes. But yeah, that talk about fuck ups.
Yeah, that is an epic level of fuck up that you probably deserve. The thing that happens to you, you probably deserve.
Two fuck ups that I think come to mind for me. So my first major fuck up that I recall in the industry, when I was first at the dealership, I was like, at my first dealer, I was a tech for a little while. It didn't work out because I was way like, they just dumped all kinds of shit on me, even though I had no experience, and whatever. I was obviously upfront about it, but I ended up leaving a drain plug loose, and car pulled around and lost a bunch of oil and supposedly damaged the engine, to which it eventually was found out that it didn't damage the engine, but there was still whatever. There was still some concerns around that, what the fuck happened or whatever. But that was my first and huge major fuck up. And then the other one that comes to mind was I was working on a car that, and I don't even know, this is questionable whether it was my fault, is I was backing a car out of my bay and someone had parked a car behind the bay across from me. I'm sure you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. That's fucking bullshit that happens. And I had backed into that car. And, you know, an obvious fuck up. I fucking hit the door of the car behind me.
Damn. Did you have to get drug tested for that, or was that not part of your dealer's policy?
We did have to get drug tested. Pretty standard whenever anything happened. So I don't recall. I really don't recall if I did, but that was pretty standard operating procedure at that dealer. So
I think that's pretty common dealership. Man, I'm as you're telling that story, I'm like, I have fucked a lot of stuff up. The first one I remember, it was, I had to do a heater core on a Beetle, not a convertible. It was just a regular Beetle that someone had bypassed, and nobody bothered to check to see why they bypassed it, just that it was bypassed. So like, I'm new. It's like my third week. One of the other techs said this needs a heater core because it's bypassed, instead of like diagnosing why it was that way. Because it was like someone had bought this car from somebody else or whatever. And so I feel like I'm going through the repair manual step by step. And if you know the VW Audi repair manual, you know how fucking stupid it is, where it's like, click a bunch of hyperlinks to take you to other places, but then you always have to get back to where you were, but you can't like open a new tab. So you have to like hope and pray you can boop your way back there. Of course, this was in the Visas days, so hyperlinks weren't a thing. And I didn't realize that the heater box was bolted through the firewall. So I'm like, it's loose, it's moving. I'm like trying to get the thing out. Pop! I break the box. Okay, I didn't realize I broke the box until I had it all the way out. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So we took care of that, and I was pretty beat up about it because heater cores are heater cores. Nobody likes doing that shit. I mean, hell, I got the one out of this black car out, and it's just whatever.
Sucks.
But,
it sucks shit no matter what.
Yeah, it pretty much sucks. That was like the oops, I fucked up. But on that same car, I fucked it up because I wasn't paying attention again, I guess. I don't know how I didn't get fired looking back on this car, because I feel like I fucked up like 25 things on this one car. And it took me 3 days to do it. I put the steering wheel on, but I guess I didn't pop the airbag in all the way. So when they would turn the wheel hard,
the horn would honk.
Yeah. So that was good. The car was gone for like a day before that started happening. So yeah, I really made myself look like an idiot on that car, and I've done other shit too. I remember one time on I think it was probably Mark 7 GTI. It was red GTI. I had the hose for the air reel, and I moved it, and it clipped the fender, which normally wouldn't be a big deal. I mean, really, it wouldn't even leave a mark on the car. But someone had where the nub thing is to prevent it to go all the way up in the reel, the stopper, they had put a hose clamp on there because the screw was loose. So of course, the one spot, so the hose clamp, it drug across the fender, and it had to go to the body shop for a couple of days. So I've broken window glass before. I think I broke that Bentley windshield, rear windshield was the most expensive thing I fucked up. And I've seen a lot of fuck ups too. You mentioned drain plugs, man. That is the most fucked up thing in the automotive industry.
Oh, period. Without a doubt.
It is. I mean, on top of being like the most common service, right? That automatically puts it up there, but it is the most brain dead thing to do as a professional technician is change the oil. So what happens is you get in autopilot mode and you're just doing the motions, not paying attention, right? There's no intricacy to changing oil. And I've seen super experienced technicians leave drain plugs loose, cause engine damage. It was like a 10 Passat that this happened on. First service, got towed back 2 days later, needed an engine and a turbo.
That's one. I mean, it gets fucked up a lot, but I think most techs, and this is just my assumption, is you fuck it up early, and then you have so much anxiety about it for the rest of your fucking life that you constantly wake up in cold sweats thinking, like, I've tightened that fucking drain plug.
Dude, we had a guy, he left like 2 loose within a matter of 2 weeks. And so it got to the point where he would torque the drain plug, not twerk the drain plug. He would torque the drain plug. Then he would paint a paint mark on it to make sure that like he could look up and go, okay, he did it. He had one that he fucking painted and didn't torque, and the shit came back. The shit came back like a week and a half later, leaking oil. We're just like, dude, how did you mess that up? I don't know. Like, it just, I'm telling you, oil changes, you're on autopilot. Your brain is not engaged with what you're doing. And, it almost sounds arrogant when I say this, thinking about how many people like really, really enjoy the time they have with their car when they change their oil, or that person changing their oil for the first time that's nervous and uncomfortable. And I understand that, but like when you've done it 10,000 times, and that's not an exaggeration, you don't think about it. It's car up, drain oil, drain plug in, filter change, fill oil, let it go, right? It's super easy to make that mistake.
For me, the one thing that I recognize now, first of all, again, that happened early in my career, and it was because we had advisors who were legit like lunatics who would just ride you to death like every minute of every day. Remember, this is northeastern New Jersey, where people tend to be a little bit more abrasive and aggressive. And so that was really probably the catalyst that created it. But, again, I think it can happen no matter what. But what that did for me is created a circumstance that when I was changing oil, I had a very methodical way. And that's what I think most techs do is you have very specific things you do in a very specific order, and you do not deviate from that no matter what. And that's what helps you prevent from doing that shit.
Yeah, I had that same order, down to like where you place your wrench and where you put this other thing and where you put the parts when they're new. Like it's pretty cool, really, if you could pick up on all the subtleties of a good technician when they change oil. It's pretty cool. I personally will be fine never changing oil again if I can get away with that. Speaking of that, I got to change the oil on my yellow car, but so yeah, I'm not getting away with that. But I worry though, like I worry so much that people have put on this facade that I just do cool shit and don't make mistakes. And it's dangerous, man. It's dangerous for the generation watching. It's dangerous for the younger technicians in the shops. And I mean, look, nobody likes going, hey, look, I fucked up. Look at me, right? Nobody likes that shit.
Right.
So I get why you may not want to, stand up on a soapbox and shout it, but it is so important. In fact, when I fucked that up, I after I calmed down a little bit and finished all my swear words that I needed to say, I went in and talked to my kid about it because I was like, this is a good place to show her that, like, when she gets upset that she makes a mistake and I tell her, hey, dude, like, everybody makes mistakes, the whole dad spiel. Now I can show her, right? And maybe that's not right, because maybe kids should think their parents are perfect, even though they're definitely not.
No, it's silly.
But yeah, I agree. But some asshole's going to think that I'm wrong. So whatever. But I thought it was a really good teaching moment of like, hey, all those times when I tell you like I screw shit up, here you go. This just cost me $500.
Right. The lack. I think. That now we're getting into parenting advice, which is that is not the lane we intended to be going down. But yeah, fuck, if you can't show your kids the lack of ego in those circumstances, I don't think you're doing a very good job of teaching your children much at all. Frankly, you have to acknowledge that you can be wrong and you can make mistakes and still get through life. That's inevitable. We all do it. We all have to do it. That's how you learn things. That's how you get good at anything. And frankly, if you haven't fucked anything up, you probably haven't taken a risk enough to really accomplish much. And even then, I'm sure the limitless number of things I fucked up, even in entry-level jobs when I started out in my life, I don't know how many there are, but there's quite a bit.
Yeah, golly, man, I've just, you ever sit back and think of like all the things you've messed up and like, how am I even alive? First of all, second of all, how did I never get put in jail or fired or like really bad off by just the stupid mistakes I've made? But they made you who you are today. And I don't want this to turn into like a competition to see who fucked up the most. It's definitely not that kind of dick measuring contest. It's a different kind of dick measuring contest for sure. But I do think that we need to be more honest about the mistakes that we make and not necessarily promote doing things like fucking up, right? It's never my goal to fuck something up. My goal is to do it right, but I also try to, like, every time you try and push the boundary a little bit or try a different technique or do something a little bit out of your norm, you dramatically increase the odds of messing something up. And there's all the cliches, right? And Formula 409 was 408 ways to not make a good cleaning product, or whatever the hell it was, right? Or Edison made 700 ways not to make a light bulb. All that shit, right? But there is, as in most cliches and stereotypes, there is a grain of truth to that. And I want, from a parenting standpoint, I want to encourage our kids when they're fucking 10. Yeah, fuck some shit up, because there's no penalty for you now. Have stupid hair and ugly clothes that are dumb that when you're 16, I'm going to pull out pictures of and go, look at how dumb you dressed. Ha ha ha. I won't really do that. But I worry that we also, like, we're encouraging our kids to do things perfect, or to not do things if they can't be perfect. And that, my friend, is terrifying and sad, really. It's just, ugh.
I think
Sad.
ultimately, but the ultimate problem with all this stuff, I believe, comes from the fact that, without a doubt, 100% chance that when you put something out there publicly, some fucking loser asshole who's never accomplished anything in his life is going to be the first person in line to criticize what you've done. And that's whether it's you or me or fucking, somebody who has no audience, with just saying it, admitting to a mistake they made, is someone who doesn't really understand what the fuck they're talking about, is the first person in line to criticize you. And that's true on YouTube channels. That's true in Facebook groups. That's true in anywhere you could ever say anything. Is
Work. Just straight up at your job.
Some fucking idiot is the first person in line to talk shit about you for fucking something up. And the reality is that person, the problem is that feels like shit. So I think that's the hurdle we all have to get past. And I think that includes you and I, and that is acknowledging that, eating the shit, and then moving past it so that you're able to say it, talk about it, whatever, is something that's valuable. Now, again, context of where it gets said and how it gets said probably is difficult, because depending on the content you're making, it may make sense in the content, whatever, blah, blah, whatever. So it may not add any value or interest in that particular thing, but that doesn't mean that we can't share that in some facet.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not necessarily gonna on all the normal social channels share that yesterday or the day before, when I was coming into the shop, I had my pants tucked under my heel and I wasn't paying attention, and my heel hit at the edge and slipped, and I didn't fall down the stairs, but it's like, how you do that, like thump 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 on your heel. So that's what happened, and like my heel still hurts today. Like, yeah, like that. There's no value in sharing that. But I did feel like this colossal boner that I did today was definitely valuable in sharing, because I fucked it up. I mean, I did it. It's not like I can pretend that I didn't do it. I mean, I could create the YouTube video where no one would ever know.
And who knows? Maybe it doesn't make the cut of the content because it doesn't feel right relative to the rest of the flow of everything, whatever. That's possible. Maybe not. You said it sounds like it might be some funny shit. A lot of times for me, what I've found is my pain, while Nathan's sitting there standing on the sidelines watching my pain and struggling and anguish, that generally leads to good content. But, not always.
Yeah, how it's going to be framed, I'm not quite sure yet. It's going to depend on what parts I can get and how I can get that. But yeah, like, me screwing that part up will be in the video in some capacity. And I know I can see fucking Johnny Keyboard Dick clacking away or booping away on his "I'm never buying anything from China" phone, bitching at me that I suck and I'm fucking stupid and all that. And it's gonna happen. I know for a fact 100%. It's gonna happen. And look, that's fine. My feeling is not hurt by Johnny Keyboard Dick clacking away on his keyboard telling me how much I suck, because ultimately it doesn't matter. Like nothing that dude says really has any influence. It, as I love to say, because I don't have a pool, it doesn't change the temperature of the water of my pool. And it's going to be important for people for those people that are open to that kind of entertainment and message. It's going to be good for them. It's going to be a good reminder, like, hey, DIYer, you're going to beat yourself to death because you messed up this little thing. Look, I'm doing this. This is actually pretty easy of a job until you fuck it up. And I fucked it up. So, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. You're not dead. Nobody got hurt. You'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and that's always going to be the number one thing, is that nobody's dead or hurt. Okay, so let's turn this on. DIYer. I could see somebody in this circumstance like, okay, I don't want to fuck my car up. How do I avoid fucking my car up or making a mistake? And I think the real question is, how does one, as we've seen, I don't know how much you've seen, you've probably seen your share. I know I have, in terms of people getting in way over their head.
Way over their head. Yeah. So how do people not get in that space? Or
I think it's easy for you and I to be like, okay, hey, I fucked something up. You eat shit. You fucked up the thing you fucked up. And it's like, okay, it's going to cost me some time or some money or whatever. But ultimately, there's a resolution for this. I think oftentimes, and I think you can probably agree with this, is that most people feel like in those circumstances, they potentially can get in over their head. And I think, again, as we've said, we've seen people getting in way over their head. And I'm trying to think about a circumstance. I can't conjure one up that comes to mind that I can point to say, here's when somebody got in way over their head. Maybe you can. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, I'm not sure. I know I've been car shopping for an upcoming project, and I found one or two. I got the car half torn apart, and then I didn't know what to do. Of course, that's not what they say, but it's like I lost interest, which means I ran out of money, or I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I think the big thing to remember is, like, if you get in that situation, there's a way out, right? There's always a way out. It may not be like ideal.
It's not what you wanted, right?
Mm-hmm. It may mean laying on your sword and having it towed to a shop and hoping they can put it back together, which they'll be able to if they're good. It's going to end up costing you more time. It's going to end up costing you more money. And that's why I think really people need to, I don't want to say they need to, but they should start small with car repairs and get some easy things out of the way, right? Air filters, wiper blades, which can also easily be fucked up too. I'm picturing like broken windshields and busted FSI engine covers on that one, right? Tire rotations, like anything can be fucked up. But the easier the job is, the less likely you're going to fuck it up. And right now, today, I mean, there's just so much resource out there, from online repair manuals to step-by-step DIYs to videos, that like you can probably find someone doing that exact thing on your exact car. They may not be doing it the best way, but before you take your tools out and walk out to the car, I would probably watch that video and go, yeah, no problem. 4 screws, I can handle that. Or, yeah, that is above my pay grade, as they say. So you at least have some idea of what's going to be involved, both in the actual like turning of bolts and nuts. And another one that I think can get people in trouble too is not having the right tools to do the job. I mean, I didn't have a couple of things for this diff. I may do, because I'm not going to not do it. But, maybe that's the thing, that you have to have this $150 tool. Well, shit, the job only costs $75 to have a shop do it. Let the shop do it.
Yeah, even if it's 300, unless, and now some people, are the type of people who they would rather just buy the tool themselves and do it and move on. To me, I say more power to you. If that's the way you want to do it, I think most people who are capable of that recognize they're not making maybe the most economical decision, but they are making a decision that makes sense for them given their trust issues around shops or whatever it may be. Um, I always think it's interesting is because we have a lot of people that I've seen over the many years that we've been making videos who they'll still ask questions about like, how hard is this? And that's something that I personally have struggled with is because in terms of fuck ups and people getting themselves in over their head, I find the question of how hard is this very difficult to answer because it's so subjective. Is because if you ask someone who if you ask somebody who's a very top tier musician, is it hard to play the guitar? The answer for them is no, it's not fucking hard at all. They fucking know how to play the guitar.
Yeah, that is a super almost unfair question to get an accurate response from. And I feel like we both do a pretty good job of like trying to give that answer in the worst possible scenario, right? So like meaning that when I say is this job easy or hard, I'm thinking of a person with very little experience or skill. So, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, TSI timing chains, easy or hard. In fact, I had an instructor at Volkswagen Academy that he would always come up with some random ass thing like diagnosing oxygen sensors, easy or hard. And someone would say easy. And he would say, really? And then he would go into this whole thing about how, like, he would walk this kid through the scenario. And by the end of it, the kid goes, man, that shit's pretty hard. He's like, but it's pretty easy, though, too. So, oh, man. I just remember all like that dude just going on automatic transmission diagnosis, easy or hard, manual transmission.
This is somebody who was in Atlanta?
No, he was in Jessup.
Yes,
Jessup MD. But I'm thinking of like TSI timing chains, and if you ask me, is it easy or hard? Well, it's not. I wouldn't call it easy, but it's definitely not hard. However, if you don't have some level of comfort with dealing with engine timing, that shit's scary, bro. Like you can fuck that up royally, easily fuck that up. And that makes it hard.
So yes, first of all, to me, TSI timing chains, I consider it to be an advanced level DIY. And we had a video recently that I put out on TikTok about an FSI car that we had at the shop that the crank bolt and for context for average people, TSIs have a very complicated timing chain. Well, they have a more complicated timing chain setup that uses a crank gear that like meshes together with the crank, and that's how it keeps in time. It's very easy to fuck that up and make sure that it's out of and make a mistake and make sure it's not realize it's out of time. FSI engines, the older ones, were very, very simple. It was super cut and dry. They would have a keyway cut into the crank. You put the crank gear on. It only goes on one way. You can't fuck it up. Well, someone, and this took a lot of diagnosis for us to get there, but someone had taken an FSI crank gear, put it on, and just rammed it home until they smashed the keyway completely flat, which was fucking crazy. Like legitimately couldn't believe it was there. Like that's not, you and I both know. But see, and this is where it's like, okay, are you in over your head or is this a mistake? Because in our world, I think this is the problem with fuck up versus mistake, right? Is in a world where a customer was not super aware of things, and they're not, and 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time, they're not going to know any better. that mistake could be explained away as like, hey, he made a mistake. It was supposed to be here, but he put it slightly off, and that's why we had this problem. We fixed it. It's fine, whatever. But the reality is that if you hear somebody put an FSI crank gear off time, you're gonna be like, what? How? How do you do that? And obviously, when we pulled the gear off, we looked at it. We're like, they called me as soon as it happened. They're like, you need to come look at this.
Oh my gosh. But it's also one of those things where I should have known better on the snap ring thing. It didn't feel right. I should have stopped, but did I? No, I didn't. So
it's fair. 100%. I know we actually took apart one of those diffs, and I remember thinking we were messing with it and we were like trying to hammer it out, and like it was like, this isn't really moving. Something's not right. There must be a snap ring on the other side. I think I remember specifically, I don't know if it ever made our video series or not on that Mark V, because it's a year worth of content in 4 videos. But for sure that can happen. I don't know. I can't forgive an FSI crank pulley off time. That's me. Maybe you feel differently. We maybe don't see eye to eye on that. I would say that is not a fuck up. That is a glaring oversight, because it only has one place.
How far off was it?
I would say if TDC and the keyway was at 12 o'clock, it was at like 10-ish.
Ooh. So they didn't even look at it. It was send it.
Just smash the fuck on.
Wow.
Like it.
Wow.
And the crazy part is that the engine was actually on time in terms of the timing mark on the pulley and the timing mark on the cam. So it actually ran okay. I presume not great, because it was like 40 degrees over advanced when we looked at the timing, and we, obviously diagnosing it was a clusterfuck, because what made it even worse, the biggest kick in the dick, was it's an FSI. Well, on the timing chain side of the cams, just so you know, there's a time belt on the one side. On the back, tying the cams together, there's a chain for variable valve timing, and there's a tensioner in the middle. The tensioner, all the guides were broken apart, and it was eating into the piston. So it complicated the diagnosis exponentially, because we pulled it apart. We're like, oh, hey, this shit's fucked up. And then we fixed it, and like, oh, it's still doing it. It's still doing the same fucking thing.
Damn.
And obviously, whatever. So anyway, that we didn't fuck up. That was not our fuck up. That was somebody else's fuck up. But anyway, yes, a fuck up nonetheless. But nevertheless, complications around that stuff. And it actually leads me to a story that I don't know if it necessarily fits this, but it's interesting. We had a customer at our shop who we diagnosed their car, and they claimed after the fact. I guess I should say this: the guy who guy did a bunch of DIY stuff, brought the car to us to because he couldn't figure out what was going on, had cam crank correlation faults or something of that nature.
How many crank sensors did he put in it before bringing it in?
And I think we talked about this briefly. So and on another episode for just a moment, he had put in 2 crank sensors, maybe 3, I can't remember. Yes, I think we did talk about this, but we actually came to a final result, which I don't think we had at that point discovered. So, customer, it was there was 2-stepping, car stalled, didn't restart. They had some correlation faults and some other stuff. We found that 2 cylinders had a no spark, and 2 cylinders had a weak spark. And so he'd put 2 cam sensors in it. I believe maybe even a crank sensor. It was an FSI Audi. We started with checking the obviously the timing side of things to verify that nothing had jumped time. We then moved on to the back side of the engine to verify that that was in time. And then I don't even remember where we went from there. Eventually, David had figured out this ignition coil thing happening. And the customer also had an ECM that we had swapped out because they already had it. So we were like, well, let's just see if this changes anything because it seems fucking crazy. We had tested wiring to all this shit to verify that wasn't bad. Eventually, David was to the point where he was like, what the fuck? And I was like, well, let's look at the pickup wheel of the crank sensor to see what the fuck, if there's something happening there. So we get a borescope in there and we find there is a massive amount of damage to the reluctor pickup. Now, for the folks at home who may not be super familiar with what we've discovered, inside of your engine, there's a wheel that tells your engine, the control module of your engine, where the crank is in its position. This is just a steel wheel that spins around. Nothing can ever really go wrong with it because nothing should go wrong with it. It's pretty much never something that fails because it can't fail. Unless
in 15 years at the dealership, thousands and thousands of cars between all the technicians and every technician I've ever talked to, one on like an ABA that got spun just a little bit is the only other one. And they weren't two-stepping, I'm guessing, in their ABA. At least I hope to God not, that I've heard of.
You should never two-step in the ABA.
You should never two-step. Hard stop.
Unless you're on the dance floor. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to judge you. So anyway, so we get in there. We find that this fucking thing is mauled. It is completely fucked up. At first, I thought it was bent, so they were going to try to like bend it back for the guy, whatever. And then as you spin it around, you realize this thing has been just chewed to pieces. Obviously, just for people at home, the only way this is chewed to pieces and destroyed is things, mainly major engine components, have broken apart and been rattling around the engine in a way that they should never be rattling around. So basically, the engine is destroyed. That's the only conclusion you can come to in this circumstance. There's no other explanation other than this engine's fucked. The customer, who is a guy, seemed apparently very nice. I didn't personally speak with him, but the other guys at the shop, of his dad later comes in and then accuses us of not properly diagnosing it, and that we should have. I did end up speaking with him because he was very upset that we should have looked at the crank wheel first.
Sir, will you authorize 7 hours of diagnosis so we can look at the least fucking likely thing to ever possibly be wrong with your car first? So we'll work hard to easy just for you. It's like, yeah, you have a CCTA with an intake manifold fault. Let's check the fucking exhaust first. Let's make sure it's not the brakes causing the intake manifold problem. Oh, 4 hours later, hey, maybe we should just look at that.
Yeah, that is a circumstance in which case I would not accept that we fucked up because, well, that's patently insane. That there's no circumstance in which looking at the crank pickup. You said you've seen one in 15 years. We're the same age, and I think you're not giving yourself a proper age because you're probably close to about 2 decades in the industry, my friend. Just saying.
Yeah, holy shit. That's how you know you're fucking old, is you can't remember time. Yeah,
you can't tell the difference between 15 and 20 years.
Hold on. I actually have over 20 because I had some time previous to my technician path, we'll say. So yeah, all right. I'll take a 20 spot on that one. Fuck.
And I only remember that because this was maybe a few weeks ago. I had a conversation with this gentleman, and I remember saying to him, "Sir, in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I have literally never seen the thing that you're telling me I should have looked at first. This never happened. So I'm sorry."
Yeah. Sorry, but this is a case where the customer is not right.
No, the customer isn't always right. Yeah. So in this case, unfortunately, he was not. So anyway, that guy who attempted to diagnose, and I think he actually did an okay job up to where he was going. Although, as per always, I think that is a thing that people tend to do. Is maybe that's the thing we should just say is, if you replace a part and the same thing's happening after you replace the part, don't assume the part you just replaced is bad. Assume the thing that you're trying to fix isn't the right thing to fix.
I mean, I've definitely had, and I'm sure you have as well, parts bad right out of the box. For sure. For like, I'm thinking back to the Mark IV airflow meter days where like it wasn't uncommon really to get 2 bad airflow meters straight from Volkswagen.
But those were like 9 revisions at like before the predecessor. Like that's such a rare exception. And as somebody who's been in the parts industry for most of my career, it's so rare.
It's
especially
super rare, especially when it's exactly the same problem.
Correct.
You fucking misdiagnosed it is what it was. It's not that crank sensor. It's almost never the crank sensor when you have timing faults. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Most of the time it's not.
It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. It's the crank sensor. Now, I do understand people's propensity to do that because they don't understand the process of diagnosing it. So they're just hoping it's going to fix it. And I get it. I get why it happens. They don't know any better. It's a decision they make. And I understand. But the surprise was being told that we didn't check the thing we should have checked first. And we for sure undercharged this guy in terms of diagnostic because we for sure got our fucking ass handed to us on this situation. But hey, you live and learn, and then you get loves.
Live and learn. So to sum it up, if you make a mistake, you probably don't need to shout it from a rooftop like Paul or I might do. However, you need to really evaluate, like, what are the steps you need to admit your mistake, own your mistake. What do you then need to do to make it right? What's the takeaway that you can take away? What's the takeaway to take away? What is the takeaway from it? And how do we not let that ruin our day, our week, our month? I'm going to be salty about mine for a little bit, just to be very honest, because that's how I roll. However, even though I will retain a high level of salinity, maybe that's a better way to say it, a high level of salinity in my blood over it, I'm surely not going to let it ruin my day.
Yeah, I think that is probably the biggest takeaway of any of this stuff is you fuck shit up. The consequences are coming regardless of whether you act like a psycho about it or not. You got to deal with it. And I think what I always say is the test of a person is not how you deal with the easy things. It's how you deal with the hard things. And yeah, I think that's a great note to end on.
Well, there you have it. That's an episode. This is what it looks like right after your press goes kaboom. You have this giant crack right here and bits of cast aluminium chunkage. Look at that shit. Look at that crack right in the bearing race. Ugh.
There you go, guys. There's an episode. In the words of the late, great Whitney Houston, crack is whack. Charles cracked his housing of his differential.
On the floor too.
He also scratched his expensive floors. That's an episode. We'll see you next week where maybe we'll have a real drink of some kind.
Who knows? Bye.
Bye.